Gordon. I am Denzil Streete, Senior Associate Dean and Director of Graduate Education here at MIT. And today, for this edition of MIT Mondays, I think this is our fourth edition, we are joined by Collette Gordon, and you'll hear a bit about Collette in a few. And MIT Mondays, just as a refresher, is our attempt to demystify what it means to get a graduate degree at MIT by bringing you the voices and experiences of some of our phenomenal students, sharing their stories and both how they got here and how they're doing in their current programs. So feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout Colette's sort of brief interview, and then we'll get as many of the questions as possible in the time that we have. So Collette, thank you for joining us. Let's kick things off by you introducing yourself. Tell me a bit about your background, where you're from, where you studied as an undergraduate, and we'll take it from there.
Yes, hello everyone. Happy Monday. Nice to meet you all online. My name, and thank you for the nice introduction, Denzil. I appreciate it. And for having me here today. I'm really grateful. So my name is Collette Gordon, and I am a third-year PhD candidate in the Chemistry and Program for Polymers and Soft Matter department. And I work in Professor Tim Swager's group on developing conductive polymers for PFAS detection. And I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and really was scared of the cold for a little while. So I became a West Coaster for 4 years at the University of Southern California, where I studied for my bachelor's of chemistry. But I really fell in love with MIT, and I was at first very stubborn to stay on the West Coast, but fell in love with the community here, and I'm really grateful to be back for my graduate degree. So yeah.
Perfect. So we'll get to what drew you to MIT in a second. But could you talk to us a bit about how did you, at what point, and how did you even think about pursuing a PhD? Talk to me about being an undergraduate and the trajectory to considering an advanced degree.
Yes. So when I was in high school and middle school, I didn't really know what it meant to get a PhD. I didn't know what the meaning of doctor. I only thought of the word doctor as a medical doctor. And so until I was a senior in high school, I had no idea what a PhD was. No one in my family had studied this. But then I went on to a conference for the UNCF STEM Scholarship. And so the UNCF STEM Scholarship stands for United Negro College Fund. And so it's for underrepresented Black STEM students who are interested in pursuing this in undergraduate. And actually, there was an ironic story where I had gone to a talk by Brian Thomas, who's actually now here at MIT. And he had told us about what it meant to be a PhD student, and that we could actually get paid to do research and learn about a new sphere of science that we never knew about. And so I was like, this is exciting. And I love chemistry and I love research. So from there, I just was like, I'm going to get my PhD as a freshman. And I try to be very strategic throughout my undergraduate studies about doing research and, learning more about different spheres of chemical research that was taking place in the world, so that I could best prepare myself for graduate school. But yeah, I started out as a freshman, just excited, and I joined Professor Megan Fieser's lab at USC and started my research journey during my freshman year. Yeah.
Nice. So you had the thought, yes, I'm going to do a PhD. I heard you talk about the fact that you joined a research lab at your undergraduate institution, so you were getting research experience. You probably also would have explored some summer research opportunities. Talk to us a bit about that. What else did you do beyond USC?
Yes. So in the summer, I had during my junior year, I had pursued research at the Center for Sustainable Polymers, which is CSP, at the University of Minnesota. And so there I worked with Professor Hillmeyer, and I developed a series of aliphatic polyesters that were degradable polymers that had a variation of architectures and mechanical properties. So that was really fun. During COVID, it was a little difficult to do research though. We were just stuck. I was stuck at home in Pennsylvania with my siblings and my dad. And so during that time, I just did like a lot of literature search for my group and helped develop a website. So I kind of learned the different ins and outs of you can do research in the lab, but you can also do literature search at home too and try to make the best of the resources I had available. Yeah.
Nice. So you're applying for graduate school. Like, what went into you determining the types of institutions you apply to, and what sort of hacks did you develop to help you navigate what we heard from several previous speakers as being a sort of really intense process? So talk to us about your process and then the types of schools you would have applied to.
Yeah, so my process, I think, and what I recommend for all of the audience to do is first do some self-reflection on your values. You know, what do you look for in a school? Location's important. Quality of education, research facilities. Who would you like to work for? Each school that I applied to, I kind of like tried to narrow it down. I had a big Google Excel sheet, which I highly recommend everyone does. Have your name, have your location of the school. What's the stipend? How much does it cost for you to get an apartment or to get, you know, a studio? What resources does the school have available? What research groups are you interested in? And then you can kind of have that long list of schools, and that's what I did. And I started that out during the summer before I started applying to school. So I had like a long list. And I kind of reflected upon like, I'm interested in doing polymer research. So I found a lot of schools that had great polymer programs, and in addition to chemistry, that I could focus on in my graduate studies. And then as far as like the self-reflection part, I think this is also really important because when you're applying to schools, it's not just about like, is the school a good fit? You know, are you a good fit for the school? But is also the school a good fit for you? So your personal values and what makes you happy at the end of the day after lab is also really important because you're going to be, you know, spending a portion of your life in this place and you're going to be making new friends and making new connections and stuff like that. So it's really good to find a place that, you know, supports you holistically.
Nice. So we heard from Collette, her hack was having a Google spreadsheet listing all the institutions and sort of the attributes and just short circuiting how you'd apply. So um what led you to MIT? Both in applying, but I would assume because of the polymer research, but why did you choose MIT? And then I think this will be a good bridge to also talk about specifically your research. There may be some chemists in the room and they will understand. I'm an economist, so I won't understand, but there may be some chemists in here who would understand exactly what you do. So talk to us about why MIT and then the research you're currently working on.
Yeah, so I actually learned about MIT through NOBUCHE, which is the National Organization of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers Conference that was being held virtually in the fall of 2021 when I was applying to graduate school. MIT was a school that I like had not considered, but then I went to this NOBUCHE conference and I had signed up for one of the meetings. And I recommend again, also in addition to the Excel sheet, look at like different events in your Excel sheet when the school's having like events like MIT Mondays, for example, where you can actually be able to meet students and professors and learn more about their work and their story. And that really gives you a fuller picture of the school that will go beyond simply the visiting weekend. So I do recommend that as well. But back to answer your question, Denzil. So I had gone to a event at NOBUCHE where I had met Professor Tim Swager, who is now my advisor at the NOBUCHE conference, along with two MIT graduate students. And the conversation that I had with Professor Swager and the grad students was really great. He wanted to get to know me, my story, talked about like all of the, you know, different types of programs MIT has, his research group, other research groups. And I could feel like a real sense of like support and authenticity from the people that were there, and that Tim and, you know, the grad students were genuinely caring about recruiting and really caring about the school. And I think that was something that to me set apart MIT from other schools, especially considering the fact that a tenured faculty was there, you know, spending time out of their day. And I'm like, not every school is going to have that. But beyond that one experience that really kind of shaped my interest in applying, I would say the visiting weekend was also really great. I got to meet a lot of grad students there and get to learn more about their research, but also like the research groups themselves. There's a great polymer program here at MIT, and I found my home in the Swagger group, which has been really supportive. So I would say, like, in addition to that, exploring a different city has been fun for me. Boston, I'm a runner. I love running in Boston. I love to try new food. I meet a lot of friends and stuff like that. So that's also a really great part as well.
Perfect. And now tell us a bit about your research.
Yes, so my research, I develop conductive polymers, which have an, electric current for PFAS detection. And so I'm interested in being able to detect these PFAS, otherwise known as like forever chemicals, polyfluoroalkyl substances, that have a really negative impact on our health. And something that I really love, or that I've been kind of driven by my project, is like I've been able to not only do like synthesis in the lab and developing my polymers, but also fabricating them onto different surfaces for developing like a sensor, and then also going full circle moment to doing sensing and developing devices. So I've got to see like a lot of different facets to my project kind of come into like play, and it's kind of exciting. Each day is different for me, so it's a lot of fun.
And for the non-chemists in the room, how would you translate your research to a general audience?
So I would translate my research to, I am currently developing a COVID-like test for environmental pollutants known as PFAS. So this COVID test, you could be able to like dip in your water and get an electrical red, resistance that would determine what's the concentration of these chemicals in your water. Yeah, so it's kind of like something a little bit newer because we currently don't have point of care tests for PFAS at home. And the Biden administration in the past has just like issued an EPA regulation and a limit on these forever chemicals. So we're kind of working on being able to detect these and give, public awareness for this.
Nice, really timely work. I think with the conversations around forever chemicals and the fact that these things just live on and have unknown impacts on humans, I think that's good. Um, so we've heard about your research. We heard about how you've sort of come to select MIT, and you have a great story around meeting a faculty member and graduate students. But surely, many students may be intimidated by applying to a place like MIT because of the perception of the difficulty. Maybe they feel like they're never good enough to apply to an institution like MIT. And I definitely don't think you want to paint a perfect picture. MIT is like heaven on earth. Talk to us a bit about some of the challenges you may have encountered and how you manage those challenges, both in the academic life and as well, maybe just navigating campus.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely, there are always going to be challenges in the path. And I think for me, there's like the challenge is, the research first, kind of being able to meet people, the social aspect of that, but also, the kind of logistics of being in graduate school. Like just the logistical things of being in graduate school are challenging. So we can kind of first dive into that transitionary period. Going from California back to Boston was difficult for me. I had to kind of get used to like a new location, navigating how, life in Boston was. And, the first few moments when I stepped on MIT's campus, I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't see anyone, who looks like me. That's kind of how I was at first, like a little scared, and I didn't find my community that, for the first few weeks. But I was also there in the summer, so there was a lot of undergraduate students. But once the fall had begun, and I got to meet my cohort, and I got to meet my friends, and I joined like BGSA, which is the Black Graduate Student Association, and like find my community, I felt like much more empowered. But the first few days might be difficult. But my recommendation is really find like your community, leverage that time that you spend during the social hours and during orientation to find people, who can support you and who you can support and who will be there with you throughout. And they don't have to be chemists. They don't have to be in your field. They can be, in any field, and that's really important. But to also address, I guess, the point where you said, like, for students who may not feel like, intimidated by the idea of MIT, um, I would say MIT is a place where, regardless of who you are, you should be able to embrace yourself, right? And in your application to graduate school, bring your full story in. Do some reflection on, like, who am I? What is my goal? What are my values? And what do I hope to bring to my graduate studies? And each one of you in the audience, I know, has a unique story that is so beautiful that you can really show your best self in your application. And you will inspire the application review committee, with your story. And so don't feel like you're not good enough, because you definitely are. You have made it to this point. You care enough to be here at this MIT Mondays, and we're all here to support you. And if you have any questions, again, there's a great team that's available to support you during this application time. And of course, I'm happy to answer your questions as well. But back to answer the question. Sorry, Denzil, I was going on a side
No,
rant.
no, you're fine. That was timely because that was going to be one of my questions. So you got it
Okay.
before I asked it. Good.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, in addition to the logistical transition, I would say also research is a challenge, starting as a first year graduate student who never touched a Schlenk line, was uneasy about air-free chemistry, to being able to do multiple reactions at one time. It was a difficult jump. It was a difficult jump for me, but I think patience is really important. Resilience, just thinking, like, having your time for you. I have my runs are my me time, so I go on my runs at least once every other day, and so that's what really keeps me going. And then I think, as far as just like the professional, like, academic standpoint, during your first year, there's going to be a lot of classes you have to take. You have to determine a research group. That's a lot of pressure, and so making sure you prioritize yourself, but also look at the bigger picture, is this is just one stepping stone in my journey. So the first to second year is like an activation energy barrier. Once you reach your, like, second and third year, then you just have to figure out, okay, how do I organize my, PhD to go to get the degree? And so that's, like, kind of like how I compare it. Yeah, hope that helps out.
And Collette, what would you say? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Mhm.
What would be one resource that you have utilized frequently or has been so impactful in your time at MIT that, like, you couldn't imagine life as a student without it?
So I would say that one very supportive organization at MIT is the Office of Graduate Education in multiple spheres, from being able to have the office OG support for, like, students when you're, like, need to take time off, for family emergencies and things like that, to events that happen on campus. OG had, like, a patent pathways, like, event that I really needed one week when I was going through it, and I was just like, focusing on my career is a positive thing to focus on right now compared to research not working. So there's a really great office. And also they have the MSRP program, which I was involved in, which really made my summer extremely fun. And, I got to inspire the future generations of scientists and PhD students there. So yeah, I would say there's also, in addition to, like, support systems, my advisor has been very supportive. I know he's not technically, like, an organization, but, like, if I ever need anything, from, like, just to talk about research, to ask for advice about, like, my career, or just like like, kind of, I was dealing with a few logistical things with my PhD during the summer. He was very supportive and always had my back. And so that's also something that's really important too. Your advisor and your team. My team and Swagger Group is very supportive too. Yeah.
Nice. And I'll just point out to our attendees, we're putting in the chat links to reference items. So Maria, our colleague, has put events that are going to happen through the end of the semester and a note about spring events. She's also put a link to the summer research program. And Maria, if you can also put a link to grad support. Collette would have talked about the fact that the Office of Graduate Education facilitates, we have an office that facilitates students needing help with extensions and time off and just someone to talk to, and that's called grad support. And so Maria just puts grad support in the chat as well. So Collette, we're winding down on my prepared questions for you, and I invite the audience to put their questions in the chat or raise their virtual hands in Zoom, and we'll get to you. So I have a couple questions left. The first one is, what inspires you to keep going? even when things get tough with your research?
That's a good one. So I think that one's like a multifaceted for me. So it's both like my family and just like general like impact on, like society, I would say, for research. So my family's number one, of course, like, my parents who kind of fostered my interest in science from a young age. My mom and I used to do science experiments together, and my dad always would take me to all the different fairs and stuff like that. And so, like, having my family supporting me has been a lot. And no one in my family has received a PhD. So being able to be the first and being able to, kind of like show them that, hey, like all of your work and all of your support is really going to a positive direction and I'm really working on it. That's something that's, I find that keeps me going. When I call my grandpa, he's like, future Dr. Gordon. And it's kind of like he jokes around, but it's like he's serious at the same point. And I have a lab friend who says like Dr. Gordon. So it's like speaking the future into existence is always important. That's something I recommend. That kind of keeps me going. Um, and I would say in addition myself, like this is something that I signed up for. I admitted to MIT. I chose it as a final school. And I find that even though research may not be going the way that I want it one day, that one day is not going to change the rest of my life. Right? That one day that your chemistry is not working or your reactions aren't working is not going to change your whole future. And so it's good to make the most of it. Give yourself grace if you're going through something during your graduate degree. Give yourself some time to reflect on it and how approach it, the best way that you can the next day. But yeah, I would say like definitely, myself and my family and support system have been very helpful. But in addition, just like societal impact, like we are, there's not a lot of female chemist of color currently, especially not with PhDs. And so being able to show the younger generations that, if I can persevere through this, so can you. You can do this too. I teach kids on the weekend. I teach them at MITES, which is the MIT Introduction to Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And so being that, I would say leader and mentor for them has been also very important for me because it shows me that I'm not just doing this for myself, but I'm setting the standard for the future generations to know that they can do anything if they keep their mind to it and to be, resilient with that. And MITES is a program you can get involved in as a graduate student. So I've been able to teach as well, which has been fun because I really do love outreach as well. So that's a cool thing to do. Yeah.
Nice. And my sort of final question is like, what's next? You get the PhD, what are your plans post-degree? I know it's a question every PhD student hates to have asked, but what's next?
I actually love this question.
Okay, nice.
I am interested in going on to receive my JD and I want to go to be a patent lawyer. So my goal is to get hired by a firm and be a patent agent and go to law school in situ. And I'm really interested in this because I like the idea of getting to learn more about different types of research going on in the world, in areas of chemistry, in areas of materials, in areas of medicine, but also being able to help advocate for scientists and give them that voice to allow for their innovations and their ideas to be protected and to help make the world, a better place.
Oh, nice. That's very interesting. In fact, I know another chemist who is actually taking that route, so we'll have to connect offline and I'll connect you to him. One of my former students from Berkeley is doing the same thing. So yeah, I'll connect you all. And sort of the final question, knowing what you know now, what is one piece of advice you'd give to someone who is right now in the midst of applying to graduate school?
So I would say that graduate school is not solely about the research as it is about you growing in, during the PhD. So as you're applying, again, like I had recommended before, think about yourself and think about your personal goals. But for me, I learned as much about myself as I did about the research. So like, how do I manage my time? How do I like, what times do I work best in the lab? What do I need when like something's not going well? What do I need to do in order to make, the future better? So I would say, yeah, graduate school is a lot of personal growth as much as it is academic. But another thing I would say that I would recommend to do that, is just to find a hobby that you enjoy when things aren't going your way. You can leverage that hobby. I love running. Some people love to do art, dance, whatever you find that makes you happy. And I think that's, two pieces of advice I'd give. But also believe in yourself. You've got this, you're all going to do great on your applications, and use the application time as a point to do some self-reflection on yourself. I remember when I was writing my applications, I was like, wow, I didn't realize that I did this during my like freshman year, and like how this shaped me, what this experience did for me. And be very mindful and reflective of what each spirit experience you had up until your application has shaped you into the person you are, and allow that story to really shine through. And you will find schools that are going to embrace your story, and we hope that it will be MIT, because we would love to have you, embrace your story, and be able to kind of like continue to grow as you start your PhD. That's what I would say.
Nice. Perfect. Thank you so much, Collette. We'll open up the floor for questions. If you have a question, raise your hand or type the question in the chat. While we wait for questions, Collette, can you give us a quick snapshot of what does a day in the life of Collette look like? A weekday in the life of Collette look like?
Yes. So the weekday in the life of Collette looks like, first, I get up and I go for my morning runs. I love sunrise runs by the Charles River, which is very close to MIT campus. We are in a beautiful spot, so highly recommend. The skyline is beautiful. And from there, I go on, have my breakfast, get ready for the day, and I start work in the lab. And so typically in the morning, I like to first plan out what I'm going to do for the day. I use a Fox planner journal. I highly recommend the Fox planner. It's like a nice, bullet points where you can kind of like map out your goals, but also like things that you like and you didn't like about the week, and you can continue on for the next. So I'll write my Fox planner about my plan for the day. And then I go and do synthesis in the lab for the morning for about like 3 hours. Then I'll take my lunch break, more research, synthesis, analysis of my reactions and things like that. And then after that, I will, finish up my lab notebook and go home for the day, have some dinner, call up my family, and yeah, read a book and go to bed.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, we have a question. How have your expectations? First of all, the attendees saying thank you for sharing your journey. How have your expectations as a graduate student evolved since your initial enrollment?
Expectations of my research or of myself?
So maybe you could answer both.
Okay. So yeah, I would say, yeah. So as far as like expectations of like myself, I think my expectations have definitely grown a lot. As you start your PhD, your skill set is not going to be the same as your skill set when you're like mid PhD. So there's an exponential growth period there. And I think that now I have definitely higher expectations for myself and how I approach my work. And I try to be a little bit more strategic about that in my bandwidth. In addition, I guess like for the PhD and for my research in general, my expectations have increased. And I will say a part of this is because MIT does have a lot of support for interdisciplinary research on campus. And so I got to take this class called How to Make Almost Anything. So regardless what field you're interested in, you can take it and you can learn how to like make devices. You can make even like tables, you can make all types of stuff, electronics. And so because I'm interested in developing these sensors for PFAS, I took this class and actually was able to develop the casing for my sensors. And so with that, I kind of was like, wow, like my project isn't simply synthesis, fabrication, and sensing. Now I can actually integrate my project into a device. So the thresholds of my expectations for my research have now increased, exponentially, I'd say, in that essence, which is good because it shows there's a growth period going on there. As far as like expectations of MIT, because I think that could also be a potential question that you're asking here. I would say that like since I started my graduate school, like see now I've learned more about the resources MIT has available. And so when I first started, I didn't know, like, for example, like OG had like this office of graduate support. I had no idea this was an office until like I had a family emergency. So things like that, where you continue to learn more, you can kind of have increase in resources available to help support you.
Nice.
Yes.
And then we have the second question. If you were to become a patent lawyer, what is your dream patent?
That's a good question. My dream impact or patent would be a patent. I don't have a particular type of science that I would be interested in, but this patent I would love to help cure some type of disease such as cancer or things like that that could really help make an impact on people's lives. Because then I could be a part of something, that's kind of making like a positive impact. That's kind of like what I would like. Yeah.
And quick question, is it pretty typical that patent attorneys have some sort of background that brings that expertise into the legal sphere? Or this would be something novel that you're doing?
So, this would be something like so you typically have a background in like some fear of of STEM, and like so with your background, they will pair you oftentimes with cases that kind of are very similar. So in the case of like my research, they might pair me with like a case of like cosmetic chemistry, cosmetic products, packaging, things like that. And then in that case, like I may not be an expert in that area, but I do know from my PhD what skills I can use as far as researching what's the new technology of this client and how can I represent this client and kind of be with our PhD skills that we learn about how to do research, you can apply that to any field and any patent you have. So in the case of like my a dream patent that would have a strong impact, even though I may not be like an expert, I know how to research into this field to be able to best represent the client.
Perfect. So I think what Collette is talking about here is some of the transferable skills, right, that you get from being a PhD student. It's not just in the discipline that you're sort of specializing in, but there's many skills that are transferable to different fields.
Mhm.
Other questions? Let's give them a couple minutes. While we wait for probably another question, I have one question. I always have questions ready. Is there anything you wish you knew how to do before starting your PhD journey? Like something like, oh, I wish I knew this thing, or I wish I had some experience with this thing before starting my PhD.
Yeah, so I would say like for me, project management is something I wish I had more experience with because as an undergraduate, researcher, oftentimes you're paired with, a mentor and you have a project. In my case, I had a project I was working on, but everything was kind of just laid out for me. Like this is the monomers you're going to use, this is the copolymerization you're going to do. And so I wish that like I had like a little bit more like project management of my own project. And I know this is kind of difficult, especially when you're having undergraduates in a lab, but I think that's something that, is very important now is being able to manage a project and also, apply a creative lens. Because as we begin to manage our own projects, we can apply different, perspectives that we continue to learn as we're doing more research. And so some new approaches that I could have applied back in undergraduate, I think could have helped a little bit. But yeah, that's something I would have liked to know more about. And that's, I think, another reason
Perfect.
why for me, like as a mentor at MSRP with my students, I first started out by saying, hey, I want you to go research for me, like what monomers you're going to use for this reaction. And then, it kind of like teaches them independent, like, project management. It has them kind of like, like more authority over their project. Of course, we as mentors are a guide, but also it's really good. So each thing I guess I learned, I hope to like continue to use with my mentees.
Nice. And the good news, Colette, I don't think we announced this yet, but sometime beginning in the spring, most likely, we're going to offer a certificate in project management for graduate students. And we're going to sponsor it, but it's going to be run out of the Career and Professional Development Office, CAPD. So look out for that.
Awesome. I will. That's exciting.
Yes. We have two more questions. So what was one of your favorite moments as an MIT graduate student?
My favorite moment. Ooh, that's a good question. I think my favorite moment was when I passed my qualifying exams. Ah, that was the best. The qualifying exams, for those of you who may not know, are exams that PhD students typically take in their first or second year, which kind of like allows you to transition from not from just from a graduate student to a PhD candidate. And so for me, I was in the PPSN program. So I took those during my first year, and it was a 6 hour written exam, 1 hour oral exam that I had to prepare for. And I spent all spring studying. I had conferences, and I would I told my dad we were driving back from Boston from Pennsylvania. And I was like, Dad, I have to study this whole time. I can't talk, like, because I was just like so stressed. But when I passed the exam, I felt a relief, and all my work that I put in, all those long hours, the sacrifice that I put in for it, all came into fruition. And so it was very good experience. And it's, I think, the secondary great experience to receiving the PhD after you defend
Right.
from what
That
I've heard.
that's just anticlimactic at that point. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. And then we have one final question. You have been involved with MSRP and MITES.
Mhm.
Are there other opportunities or initiatives at MIT that you're excited to get involved with as a graduate student?
Yes, so I'm also currently involved with the Nobuche chapter here at MIT. So myself, along with a fellow chemistry PhD here, are both representatives for Nobuche. And so we organize collaborative meetings, which is one's happening next. I think it's April or May, where we're going to invite a bunch of students from the Nobuche collaboratives to MIT campus, and we're going to have like a poster session and stuff. So we'll be sharing more information about that. But that's something I really like, because it's like, again, like a full circle moment. I think MIT has been a lot of full circle moments for me, where it's like I started learning about MIT through Nobuche. Now I get to kind of share more about it as a representative. But I'm also involved with Women in Chemistry. So that's an organization of female identifying chemists here. I'm a co-president of that club, and we're organizing a celebrating women in chemistry poster session this spring. And I've been working with like the Women's Chemist Committee for that as well. So pretty cool. But in addition, I think like initiatives, MIT does offer a lot of support for if you're interested in like environmental initiatives, diversity initiatives. There are like funds available that you can apply for, regardless of what type of events you'd like to have. So I think that's something that like also sets it apart from a lot of other schools, is like here they want to support your ideas. So regardless of if it's not a club currently, you can get funding to have an event, and that's really nice.
Nice. Okay, Collette, I don't see any more questions, but I think we've had a great time learning about forever chemicals and your path to MIT. Any last words you wanted to leave to probably some nervous individuals who are applying to MIT this application cycle?
Yeah, so first, relax. You've got this. I recommend again to just spend some time, reflecting on yourself and your goals, and really allow for your story to shine. Your story is unique, and we value your story. We value you, and we want you as the sign. So put your best foot forward is my recommendation, and definitely don't procrastinate those applications till the last minute. Contact professors if you haven't already, and make sure that you're being proactive with that. But also, don't be nervous. It's a very scary time to be transitioning from the undergraduate degree to the PhD, but we are here for you. And again, if anyone has any questions or they want to learn more about anything that we've discussed today, I'll also be happy to answer that via email or set up a call as well. So
Perfect. Thank you so much, Collette, and thank you so much, attendees, for being flexible with our issues around Zoom. But I think today we ended in a good place with a great guest speaker. And so we'll be in touch. I believe we have the final edition of MIT Mondays happening next Monday, November 25th, at the same time, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again, Collette.
thank you, Denzil. It's very honored to be here, and thank you all for attending, and hope you have a good rest of your week.
All right. Take care.